Hello and welcome to this lesson on tasks and the backstack in Android. In this lesson, we'll take a deeper look at the organization of activities in the Android system and how they are dealt with when pushed to the background. As we have previously seen, applications in Android can contain one or more activities, each one representing a screen for the user interface of the application. In this example flow, the user starts an application, application A, with its launch activity, activity A. While in activity A, the user performs some operation that requires to open a new activity. Maybe the user requires more details about an object in activity A, and the operation is available to receive more information for that object. From this user operation, activity B of application A is opened, and activity A moves to the background. We will soon learn that this pushes activity A to the backstack, where it will remain with other activities until there is a need to present it again. Then in activity B of the application A, the user requests an operation, like share, and an implicit intent is broadcast to applications on the Android device. Application B can receive the intent, and the user selects it to open activity A of application B. This is open to deal with the operation of sharing data from activity B of application A. Activity B of application A is now in the backstack, and the task that contained application A in this example is now completely on the backstack. Tasks in Android are collections of activities that the user interacts with when performing a certain job. These activities are arranged in the backstack as they arrived when they are no longer in the foreground of the Android system. Each application, when running, will contain one or more tasks in the Android system. As the Android system navigates through tasks upon user interaction or other requests, it will push the activities to the background, and only one task can be in the foreground at a time. When in the foreground, a task, and in particular the activity on top of that task, will receive user input like touch events. Here we have an example of tasks running on the Android system. Let us assume that a user starts a new application, which takes up task 1, and the application has a launch activity of activity A. Well, in that application, the user performs actions that open activity B of the application and then activity C. Then let's assume that the user performs another action that opens a new application with activity D in a new task, task 2. Now we have our second application in task 2 with the activity D on the top of that task in our foreground. When a user navigates away from an application, that application is pushed to the backstack, and the user can navigate back to the application by clicking the application icon or selecting the application from the Recent Apps Android list, which can be opened from the Recent Apps button. Assuming the user selects our first application, which occupied task 1, from our recent apps, it will be pushed back to the foreground, including all of its activities that were previously launched. The backstack in Android contains the previously run and not destroyed activities of applications, arranged in the order they were opened. It is incrementally built according to the user navigation through the Android system and applications. The backstack stores the activity history of a user through their navigation and usage of the Android system. As of Android 3.0, some changes were introduced to the global navigation behavior, including the up navigation, which we will see shortly. In addition, the recommended conventions for app navigation as of Android 3.0 were changed so that the back keys behavior is local to the current task and does not capture navigation across different tasks. In some cases, there will be a need to open an activity in an application that is not the launch activity. For instance, upon receiving a new notification for an email, opening the activity with the content of the email instead of the launch activity for the email application. In these cases, it may also be important to offer proper back navigation support through synthesizing deep links. This technique allows us to also add the activities that normally would be before the launched activity in the backstack, so that when a user presses the back button, they are taken to what would be the previous activity. This technique can be useful when jumping to a specific activity that is not the start of a normal flow within an application, or when arriving at an activity from an implicit intent, notification, or other non-launch based action. We have previously mentioned the up mechanism in the action bar in Android. It is important to note that the up action and the back action are two distinct actions, although in many cases they may result in the same outcome. The up button is used to navigate within an application to the hierarchical parent of the current activity, while the back button is used to navigate through the history of activities. As we see in this diagram, we have the example of an application being launched and then opening a detailed activity from the main activity. In this case, the up button and the back button would have the same outcome of returning us to the main activity from the detailed activity of the application. But if we opened a third activity from the detail activity, and its hierarchical parent was also the launch activity, then the up button would return us to the launch activity, while the back button would return us to the detailed activity. When launching new activities, a launch mode parameter can be set or pre-configured to launch the activity in a different state. In some cases, this will affect the backstack. This mode can be configured in the Android manifest definition for the activity, or pass as a flag in the intent for starting that activity. The standard launch mode is the default launch mode. The system will always create a new instance of the activity in the target task and then route the intent to it. In the single top launch mode, if an instance of the activity already exists at the top of the target task, the system routes the intent to that instance through a call to its onNewIntent method, rather than creating a new instance of the activity. In the single task launch mode, the system creates the activity at the root of a new task and routes the intent to it. However, if an instance of the activity already exists, the system routes the intent to the existing instance through a call to its onNewIntent method, rather than creating a new one. The single instance launch mode is the same as single task, except the system does not launch any other activities into the task holding the instance. The activity is always the single and only member of its task. This information and other information can be seen in the developerandroid.com Guide, Components, Tasks, and Backstack section. When configuring the launch mode for an activity, the launch mode can be pre-configured in the Android manifest definition for the activity, as we see here, under the parameter Android Launch Mode. In addition, in runtime, the flag for a launch mode can be set to the starting intent for the activity, as we see here in the Java code example. In addition to launch mode, there are other intent flags that may be set that can affect the backstack and how the activity is launched. Some of them include flag activity no animation. This flag will prevent the system from applying an activity transition animation. Flag activity reorder to front. This flag will cause a launch activity to be brought to the front of its task history stack if it is already running. Flag activity no history. If set, the new activity is not kept in the history stack. Flag activity clear top. If set, and the activity being launched is already running in the current task, then instead of launching a new instance of the activity, all the other activities on top of it will be closed, and this intent will be delivered to the new, now on top, old activity as a new intent. A representation of how an activity with launch mode single task is added to the backstack. If the activity is already a part of the background task with its own backstack, then the entire backstack also comes forward on top of the current task. Thank you for joining us in this lesson on tasks and the backstack in Android. Join us in our next lesson where we go over the lab exercise for this section.